What's up and welcome back to Nowstalgia Pod, giving you your weekly look at what's going on in pop culture. My name is Pat Sheehan, still in quarantine with my co-host, Dave Martin Swagger. Dave, we had a nice weekend though. Did you get outside at all?
I did, yes. Get that sun, get that vitamin D, get that tan going while staying 6 feet away, obviously. Yeah, no, it was good to finally get outside a little bit.
Yeah, I got a little bit of color, and anyone that's watching on YouTube can see I have the mask tan. You know, I was wearing my mask out and about this weekend, being responsible with my socializing outside, and gonna probably have a weird mark for the summer, but that's okay because it's important to be safe. Although I saw a lot of people without masks out and about, and I'm a little bit worried that we might see a spike in cases, which would lead to further stay at home orders. And if that happens, Dave, it's going to be bad news for everybody, but especially for movie theaters. And that brings us to AMC, who is not having a great week, would you say, with Universal talking about the success of Trolls World Tour 2, the rise of the Trolls. I actually don't know if that's the name. Probably not.
Trolls World Tour,
Trolls.
the second Trolls movie.
And it made over $100 million just being a pay video on demand option, and that's pretty crazy. You have this big children's movie. It did really well. It would have been about in third just for its on demand numbers. So the Universal head said, yeah, when movie theaters do come back, we will be releasing it in theaters, but also for pay on demand as well at home. So AMC did not like that very much and said, well, Universal, we're not going to allow you to show your movies in our theaters anymore. And Regal's parent company soon followed up in unison with AMC. So right now, it's Universal versus the movie theaters. Dave, where are you falling in this battle?
Well, I do appreciate AMC throwing up the bird real fast with this, to be honest, because we all know that both parties need each other to succeed. And I think a lot of people, especially people that are just rooting for more stuff to be VOD, are kind of getting ahead of themselves with their declarations about movie theaters, because let's not forget, Universal was very quick to push No Time to Die to November and Fast 9 to 2021. They could put those movies that are done out right now on VOD if it was actually a realistic option for the profit margins they are seeking. Trolls World Tour making $100 million. That's in about 3 weeks. That's with a captive audience at an inflated rental price and no competition. $100 million, even when you get like an 80-20 take as opposed to like the 50-50 theater split, even with that increased, return, that ain't going to cut it for Fast 9 or No Time to Die. Even if we double that or triple that, that still ain't going to cut it. They need each other. They need the theaters. Obviously, AMC and Regal can't cut out some of the biggest franchises they have because it's the blockbusters that really make all the big money for theaters, right? So they need each other. And with nothing, I think, of note for Universal coming out until like September, when the Candyman reboot is currently dated, there's plenty of time to renegotiate with windowing, right? So I think it'll be resolved in some case, although clearly the windowing will probably be changed in some way. But it's just kind of interesting to see it, I think, blow up so publicly and so quickly. But I guess it also isn't that unexpected, It's kind of, the COVID's kind of accelerating a lot of, changes. So kind of interesting.
Yeah, these changes were things that people have been talking about, had been kind of on the horizon. Even from the start of our podcast 4 years ago, we've kind of been keeping our eye on the shift to paying to watch movies that are in theaters at home. And it's inevitable that at some point this will probably be an option, or at least be a quicker option than it is currently. But yeah, as you said, the COVID-19 situation has sped a lot of this up. However, in the long run, I agree with you. I think this is a lot of posturing, and it's going to end up they're going to work something out. But it is interesting to think. Netflix has recently started to build a theater, I believe, and in New York City, they're building this like very upscale and like modern theater.
They bought some famous theaters. I forget the names. The Egyptian is one of them. One in LA, one in New York. Yeah.
Well, one thing I was thinking about is if they would maybe do something along the lines of if they do expand their theaters down the road, make deals with these companies so that they could get their movies quicker to streaming, but have like exclusive releases. Now the theaters obviously are the companies like Universal that wouldn't really make sense for, but for something like an A24 that might be enticing, not only to get more eyeballs on it, but potentially make more of an event around these sort of things. I know that you talked last year about going to see the movie's escaping me, but you saw a director introduce his movie, The Lobster, or not The Lobster. You Like Me, Don't You, Lobster?
The Lighthouse, yeah,
The
Robert
Lighthouse.
Eggers Q&A.
So close. And that sort of thing feels very intriguing of like some sort of partnership if these smaller production companies want to team up. I don't know the math on it, and again, I'm not an executive, but just something I was thinking about if there's ever an option like that. But for the large scale ones, I don't think they could ever be that exclusive to make their margins back.
No, and that's the thing. If for some reason this was to go in effect moving forward, big scale blockbusters would just need to cost less money for them to be realistic, because though they only cost so much, $200 million and up, because they can get pretty much guarantee they're going to make the profit back.
Right.
So there's two sides, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I don't think, I don't think anything's going to be too rapid. We have a long time for this to simmer down.
For sure. Trolls World Tour, upending the market. But we're going to move on to some music today. So before we do, I forgot to say this at the top, just hit that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube. We appreciate you, and we want you to follow along with us as we talk about Car Seat Headrest. Dave being potentially one of the biggest Car Seat Headrest fans I know.
Saw them live, brother. Have you done that?
Actually, I have not. You saw my Gov Ball, 3 years ago?
Yeah, I just killed some time when they were on.
Well, what was their set like? I'm very interested to hear.
Yeah, it wasn't a huge crowd, but they were just kind of jamming out. Will Toledo just chilling up there, strumming his guitar, belting out his songs, And it seemed to be that the people that were watching were having a good time. So that's good, I guess.
It was actually really interesting because as I was listening to this most recent album, Making a Door Less Open, in the first original album that they've dropped since Teens of Denial in 2016, I almost felt as if the shift that they had within this album in their musical style was almost intentionally to make songs that fit better for a festival type setting or just a concert type setting in general. Will Toledo, famously known for creating all these albums. I think it's like 12 self-released albums prior to Teens of Denial, which he released on Matador. And having this very unique songwriting style. He's very almost like tongue-in-cheek with some of it, like the way he delivers his lines and kind of just throws them in there on top of other lyrics. And also kind of making these not classically structured songs. And this album, Making a Door Less Open, felt a lot more like a traditional rock indie album. And I think that was to varying effect. Overall, I think I really liked it, but I was wondering, I know that you weren't super thrilled to go into this album. How did you feel leaving it?
Yes, with my admittedly low expectations going in, I was I'd say surprised for sure, because as you said, this album is definitely intentionally more inviting and conventional, which to me makes it more accessible and appealing. Now, for someone who holds up the first big album as an indie masterpiece of the last decade, people in those camp probably aren't as happy with this change. But for me, as someone who really wasn't a fan going in, I did find some songs that stood out to me. So I guess it depends what kind of fan you are.
Yeah, I think expectation plays a big part into this. And, Twin Fantasy was the album that he re-released in 2018. Received a lot of scrutiny publicly, not necessarily scrutiny, but I guess misinterpretation might be the way to put it. A lot of music publications took the meaning of the album and tried to kind of dig deeper and develop some narrative around it. I think it was potentially, I think it might have been Up Rocks, like wrote about how they think the album is about a underage person having a relationship with their teacher, and it was like a gay relationship, and like assuming that this is a Will Toledo's experience with it, and he's never confirmed that, but basically that caused him to like cut off from public. And kind of in that time since he released that, him and one of the other members of the band, I think his name is Andy Katz, started this band called One Trait Danger or something like that. It was just this concept EDM electronic type band where within 2 albums they did the beginning of the career and the end of the career for this band, and kind of follows this narrative, and it's all EDM electronic. And I think you can really hear a lot of those elements break through onto this album, which I think added a lot to most songs. I think for some of them it kind of left them feeling a bit just like, okay, why was that on here? I think there's about 9 of the 11 songs I think deserve to be on this album, and 2 that just feel like complete filler. But tell me about the songs that you liked. I'm very interested to hear what you felt was more accessible and struck you more.
First track, Weightlifters.
Yeah,
it's a pretty easy highlight. That's just kind of a jam and rock song. And I didn't really associate that with their last album, and certainly the Bandcamp stuff before that I dabbled into.
Yeah.
And then after that, I'd say Hollywood stands out. I think that's a song that's getting quite a polarizing reception because it's certainly really simple. And I think in a certain sense, people are describing it as like, is Will mocking the people that think they're better than Hollywood? And like, I feel like Will Toledo's still a really enigmatic guy, and his message is a little opaque at times. It's kind of funny. He's been doing press and stuff, and he's been wearing this gas mask. And is he? I think he was like hoping that would land better when he probably thought of that a few months ago. And now that everyone's covering their face in some regard, it doesn't stand out nearly as much. So that's kind of an unintended consequence of COVID-19. But nevertheless, I think it flowed pretty well. So I was surprised how accessible I found it overall.
Yeah, Hollywood and Weightlifters are clear standouts. And it's kind of funny that Will Toledo, like you said, is such an enigmatic figure, and that he can write this song that's so simple, and most bands it would just be taken forward as like, okay, it's just a dumb rock song. But because Will Toledo is such a lyrical and linguistic guy, now it's like, oh, is this a commentary on the simplicity of most rock songs? It's like it gains this whole other meaning when it catches the interwebs attention. A couple of the songs I wanted to just shout out that I really liked. I thought the song Martin was really cool in the construction of it, the way he like kind of layered at the end, like the drums, the acoustic guitar, and these other like electronic flourishes on there, and like some backing vocals over it too. The second Deadline's Thoughtful in parentheses, I thought really reminded me of Rat-a-tat a lot, and I wouldn't be surprised if they were kind of infusing some of that into One Trait Danger as well. And then one of the last songs, Life Worth Living, I felt was a really, really solid track and infused that like EDM feel really well in there. So overall, I was really pleased with the album. I think I can understand some of the scrutiny and some of the criticism it's receiving, but if you do take it at face value as just a good, just a rock and indie album, I think you can leave pretty pleased. I wasn't as pleased though, Dave, having to listen to this new drop from Drake. I mean, we've talked a lot about Drake over the years. He's dropped an album almost every year, or a project almost every year that we've been doing this podcast. So we've had a lot of time to talk about him. And Dark Lane demo tapes, I guess this isn't an album, a mixtape. Who the F knows? My favorite part about it wasn't 25 songs like Scorpion, or I think his other album, More Life, was right around there. So
yep.
I didn't have to sit with this for too long, but I left with a lot of the same feeling as those albums, where it's like some of the highs were pretty high, but a lot of times I just found myself being like, this is very mid-level type shit. And that's kind of where I sit with Drake now. Is there's a lot of filler to get to like the really good stuff, but when the stuff is really good, it's really really good. How are you feeling with the surprise drop?
So you're saying you weren't booted up, turned up, and piped up?
Left foot slide, right foot up, right foot slide, left foot up, dog.
Yeah, I think the best part about Dark Lane demo tapes is that Drake made it pretty clear from the jump that this was just a data dump. This was a collection of a lot of these songs were already out / leaked in some form. And on top of the announcement of this, he said that his proper studio album's coming this summer. So basically, I'm treating this like with an asterisk, depending on how the album goes. He's talking about making a concise, focused album for this new one, very much unlike Scorpion, and that'll go a long way because, kind of as you said, Drake kind of is just kind of competing with himself right now, and I hope Drake will understand the value of not needing to set new streaming milestones and all these kind of meaningless things that he doesn't really need to work hard to achieve. He just needs to set out and do them by releasing big projects and being, Drake. And hoping he can get back to something that's just a little more artistic with the full length coming. That's what I'm hoping for. That's kind of what I'm qualifying a lot of this with, because he made it clear that this is the throwaways. And I was very happy that Tootsie Slide in particular was not the lead single for that album coming this summer, because Tootsie Slide is a rough song. Not a terrible song, but a song that is just kind of gross because it's like, oh, Drake decided to make a
TikTok song.
Like, it's coming full circle in a bad way, because back in 2018, In My Feelings almost kind of spawned the modern dance challenge, but Drake didn't intentionally do that. That was just a byproduct from Shiggy going viral, making the fucking challenge, right? So it's just kind of weird with Tootsie Slide. It's like I feel like the verses on that song are decent, but God, the hook parts, it's terrible.
Either way you do it, we about to slide.
Okay. No, thank you.
I will stand here. Yeah, that's a good way to look at this. And God, I hope you're right. I hope that this is like just the dump, and this doesn't end up being on the same level quality as the album. But the thing is, like, man, looking here, Scorpion was literally 25 songs. More Life clocks in at 22, and he's dropping just 14 random songs here. Like, how many songs this guy got? He's just constantly recording. Like, what's happening here? How does he have this many songs to just throw away?
Well, and that's, I feel like that's kind of the lesson too, is Drake seems to put out anything he's basically finished at this point. I mean, last year was the first year he didn't release a proper full length in many years, maybe 2014. Nothing Was the Same Time, a while ago. Yet he put So Far Gone out on streaming service, got that all cleared, and then he released Care Package, which was a collection of all the big Lucy's he had put out in the past decade, which were non streaming services, And I liked a lot of those songs, but you kind of have to view that again. It's just a data dump that's now accessible for streaming, so now Drake can get paid from those songs. That's all that was.
Right.
It's also kind of frustrating that We Made It, his song with Soulja Boy, was not included. Wish he could have cleared that one. Anyway, yeah. So this isn't anything new, I guess, per Drake standards. But I was thinking, and a lot of people have been talking about this. The quarantine environment was kind of ripe for somebody with a big profile to just take advantage of the opportunity with everyone around, and especially with artists like with all kinds of stature, Dixie Chicks, Haim, Lady Gaga. A lot of people started delaying their plans. Sam Smith. We kind of had this room once everyone who had already kind of done their rollouts were done, like The Weeknd and Dua. So Drake just kind of putting out just what he had ready to take advantage makes sense for Drake the businessman. But when we're being music critics, this doesn't really help the case, But like I said, I'm just happy that It doesn't seem like Drake's putting too much onus on this. So whatever. Anyway, I think in terms of songs that were already out, I really like When to Say When. I think that's a pretty solid, like the boastful, like going through the bars song. Drake's done that before, but I think that one's pretty good. You have War, which was already out, and then we get Demons with 504 and Sosa Geek. Those are the two.
That's the one.
Those are the drill songs from Drake,
Mm-hmm.
and that's Drake being his chameleon self. I think he's got a mixed reception in terms of if people like him doing the drill aesthetic. I think I like it more on Demons. More than anything, I just appreciate the look he's giving Fivio and Sosagi to not really famous at this point New York artists. That's cool. You also had Pain 1993, which was this much hyped leak song with Playboy Cardi, hyped mainly by the Cardi stans.
Mm-hmm.
Cash Cardi is truly just in another world at this point in terms of what he does to his vocals in post. I thought the song was okay. I actually thought Drake was better than Cardi on this. So in terms of the hype, I thought it was underwhelming. What did you think of that one?
It stood out because of the vocals, but there was maybe 3 songs that really caught my attention. You already mentioned one, When to Say When. I really liked Demons. That's probably my favorite song off the album. And then From Florida with Love, I thought was pretty good.
That's my favorite one.
But Pain 1993, like I noticed it and I was like, Cardi's on this. And then I just kind of tuned back out and left my head. Like 90% of Drake songs do, but the 10 that don't are always in my head.
Yeah. and D4L, the song with Thugger and Future, that's solid. That's a solid. It's cool seeing Drake do real trap once in a while, but that reminded me a lot of Portland off More Life with Quavo and Travis, a song that's like a banger in the moment, but it's not going to last at all. So that kind of felt familiar in that regard. I thought Landed and Losses were solid, but not super memorable either. And that's really it. So I really do like From Florida with Love. I've run that back a lot. I appreciate the Static Major shout out. The collaboration with one of Cardi's big producers out. That's a cool link. That song actually, I'm curious how old that song might be or some of those verses, because he's shouting out YMB, Young Money Billionaires. He hasn't been on Young Money in years, and even though he's still cool with everyone, like he hasn't made a Young Money name drop in some time. So I'm wondering if that song's a little old. Either way, yeah, it's really just more Drake.
Yeah, 2 thoughts on Demons. I wasn't sure which one it was, but someone near the beginning sounded a lot like Tyler on it, I think. Tyler, the creator. And I was like, oh shit, is that on this? It might have been Soski, because I'm a lot more familiar with Fivio after viewing his music recently. But also, Chicago Freestyle. Givian, I really thought that was Sampha for a second.
Yes.
Which is, I think the vocal similarity is like striking. I'd like to hear more from him and see if he's got the chops similar to Sampha. Sampha's like rising up our rankings every day.
Another Drake collaborator,
really
too, Sampha.
Yeah. Drake, he is what he is, and we'll wait for judgment on his quality till the summer when he releases the proper album. Hopefully it doesn't get pushed back. But Dave, may the 4th be with you. And today,
also with you.
As of recording, lift up your sabers. It is the May the 4th celebration. We got some Star Wars news, some exciting stuff, and we also got the finale of Star Wars Rebels. Which
almost Clone Wars.
Clone Wars. The other one. So Dave's gonna be talking about that, but let's start with the stuff that I'm also able to talk with you about, which is that Taika Waititi has been tapped to direct a Star Wars film. He's also going to be co-writing it. As far as like news goes, I don't really recall how much news ever gets dropped on May the 4th regarding Star Wars. I think sometimes it does, sometimes not. How are you feeling about Taika getting tapped for a Star Wars original?
Yeah, I think it had like officially dropped in the trades that Lucasfilm were courting Taika earlier in the year, attempting to nail this down after his work with directing the Mandalorian finale and being in the Mandalorian, and of course being in the Disney orbit already from Thor. That's cool, right? Taika is definitely someone with a unique voice, a unique perspective, and I think that goes without saying. And he's also surprisingly quite mainstream now, which I think actually probably makes the Disney executives a little more happy with it too. So, with all the caveats that we have now with Disney and Lucasfilm, assuming they give Taika the rope he needs, this sounds tantalizing. That's what a lot of directors that have been attached before. I think it does continue the general thought and messaging we've been getting that Star Wars is moving away from the traditional trilogy format after Benioff and Weiss left. There's Kevin Feige may or may not have been developing something. We know J.D. Dillard might have been working on something recently. Ryan Johnson's stuff hasn't been canceled at this time. And now you have Taika as well. They seem to be just doing a lot of different things, taking pitches. Of course, alongside this news, they confirmed the Leslie Headland is from Russian Doll is developing a show as well. That goes on top of your Cassian Andor show and your Obi-Wan show. So I think Star Wars is kind of branching out. That's what we're getting. And Taika is a in-demand, appealing director to do that if they do let him follow through. So I like it.
I obviously like it too, but I also am wondering, with Taika just doing a lot of stuff coming up. I mean, we talked about how he's set to direct a movie that's supposed to be coming out either late this year or early next year. Now he's doing a Star Wars thing. He's also directing Thor, Love and Thunder.
Yep.
When are we going to hit the too much Taika thing? Like, when are we going to get over that curve? Because it's going to come at some point unless he hits on all this, and that's going to be an incredible batting average if all of this is hit. So I'm a little bit weary about about when that's going to come. But overall, I mean, if you can get him right now and bring a different type of movie into the Star Wars universe, I mean, Rogue One seems to have been the biggest winner from the trilogies, the most recent trilogy, falling a bit flat for people, because you look at something like Rogue One and it was just such a breath of fresh air within this universe, this cinematic universe that has been forced to remain so samey. So if you're bringing Taika and you're getting a fresh voice, I mean, that's something I think they have to do almost more than Marvel has to at this point. So that's just really exciting, and I like that they're trying to go off in some different directions and bring in some new perspectives to things. So you need to freshen it up for sure. And did Clone Wars freshen up your perspective of Star Wars? How are you feeling about this most recent season?
Yeah, so Clone Wars coming back and then being wrapped up in earnest is a lot different than a lot of the other Star Wars convos we've had of late, because it's just true fan service. If anything, it's dedication, gratitude being shown to Dave Filoni for being able to finish his creation. So it's quite different, but honestly, for the most part, it's been really positive discourse about the 7th season, because I think everyone's just happy to be back and see this kind of send off. And I think ultimately the finale, which just aired today on the 4th, did land really well. And I think the Star Wars faithful are certainly really excited for Dave Filoni's future. He involved a bit with The Mandalorian, but what's next? Because he's clearly one of their loyal soldiers, one of their best creatives. So what's coming next? And it was just kind of cool to see them, see Dave and crew land the ship with the end. And this season, in a sense, it's kind of bittersweet, because it was just 3 4-episode arcs, and 2 of the arcs don't feel nearly as narratively important as the final arc. And I think that does present some disappointment to people overall. That first arc, The Bad Batch, that was out in a story reel form. We kind of knew that story already, because Filoni and crew had kind of put out some information on planned storylines after the show was canceled, planned storylines they had for later in the line they didn't get to make. So seeing that story finished and then watching those episodes, that was cool and all, but in terms of final season, didn't quite warrant the the resources at this time. But I'm not going to complain. And the second arc was kind of a middle arc, kind of reintroducing Ahsoka and the Mandalorians and getting us to the final third arc, the Siege of Mandalore. And again, bit of a misallocation of resource, in my opinion. But that third arc, the animation in particular, definitely stood out. You can tell that Lucasfilm and Lucasfilm Animation, they really focused on investing in this final stuff. And it was kind of presenting the most tantalizing stuff that I found about prospect of this new season once we saw that trailer, because the events of that final arc are taking place concurrently with Revenge of the Sith, and that's really cool. Mm-hmm. And seeing Ahsoka and Rex experience that worked really well, which I wasn't positive on going in, because we know what happens to Darth Maul and Rex and Ahsoka, because they're all in Star Wars Rebels, which takes place after this. And of course, we know what happens to Anakin and Obi-Wan. So they needed to present this kind of like detente in, I think, an important way to make it feel worthwhile, because there was no like true stakes. And I think Darth Maul was a big winner for this too. And even though he didn't die, just the way him and Ahsoka kind of became connected. Darth Maul somehow became one of the most fleshed out villains in the Star Wars universe, which was not something literally anyone thought when we met him in The Phantom Menace. So that's really cool, I guess. And Ahsoka, people are just really hoping we get to see more of Ahsoka in the post-Rebels world, because she was really a well-rounded character at this point, and getting the send-off, the traditional send-off with Clone Wars, even though she comes back in Rebels, worked really well. So Clone Wars Season 7, yeah, it's not where I'd tell you to start if you're just getting into Clone Wars or anything, but they nailed the ending.
Ahsoka seems like a character who is just rising further and further into the consciousness, especially with the, talk about Rosario Dawson playing her. But yeah, to hear that they made Darth Maul such a well-rounded character, because if you don't follow these, the animated series, the information we have about Darth Maul is he doesn't talk and then gets cut in half by Obi-Wan. And then, he pops up again in Solo for 1 second,
which confused a lot of the normies,
and that's basically it. Right. So it's nice to know that you can go in and get some more Darth Maul content, because we're all itching for that. So it sounds like even though it wasn't necessarily like the best season of animated television, still worthwhile and still a fun addition. And Disney Plus has been hurting for some original content during this time, so having this fill the void and have something to follow along is great.
Since Disney Plus came out, I've turned it on specifically to watch The Mandalorian, Clone Wars Season 7. I rewatched Force Awakens and The Last Jedi before Rise of Skywalker, and that's it. I have not turned it on for any other purpose.
Yeah, I turned it on the other day. I was looking for, I forgot. Oh, I went to go watch the Simpsons episode I was thinking about, and I was like, I haven't turned this on in like 3 months. It's not great. But we'll have plenty of new content coming up, and they've got everybody hooked in when The Mandalorian 2 drops, whenever that is. So we'll be talking more about Star Wars and Disney. But now we should move on and talk about Betty. A show that wasn't necessarily on my radar. I know that you were waiting for it, because you had also seen the movie Skate Kitchen, which just seems like is either an adaptation of, or maybe a longer look at that sort of story. And Betty on HBO, for a show I was kind of going in with just knowing it was about skating and women or young females. It was a really fantastic episode. Yeah, it was a really fantastic first episode, and it really sucks you into all these characters. I'm intrigued to learn more about them and kind of see where it goes. But I think what I was left with more than anything was it just felt like a really fun hang. Like it doesn't leave you where you're like, oh, like that character is my favorite, or that one's the best. But I was just like, it was just like hanging out in New York City for a day with nothing really to do, but like a slight thing propelling you forward. And I don't know, it's pretty cool. How did you feel about episode 1 of Betty on HBO?
Yeah, so Skate Kitchen, which was a really small indie release from Crystal Massette, that made my top 10 in 2018. That was a really great movie. 2018 was kind of a sneaky year for skating between mid-90s, Skate Kitchen, and of course, Minding the Gap. And in mid-90s, got a lot of attention for casting Kel Smith, a skater and Odd Future affiliate, in his first role, in the movie. And Skate Kitchen is literally just casting this crew of female skaters in New York City. And Crystal just kind of stumbled across this and made it short originally. Then, through some creative input from people at Sundance. She expanded this into the movie, and just basically these girls, none of which we really acted before, just kind of playing fictional versions of themselves. And that movie also had a really great Jane Smith performance of all people. So I'd recommend Skate Kitchen. It's on Hulu right now. And Betty, I knew they were developing this, but I just totally missed this was coming. And it's funny, it's a Friday show on HBO, and only 30 minutes, 6 episodes, so it's going to be a quick watch. But I agree with you. It's just really the vibe, man. And for me, having watched Skate Kitchen, I kind of know who these characters are a little bit. But this kind of, I think, is just a spin-off. I don't think there's really going to be any connection to the first movie. You don't need to watch it, but I would recommend the movie. Because in the movie, Rachel Vinberg's character, Camille, she's the one who loses her phone in episode 1 of Betty. She really stood out. She's the central character in the film. And that was a really impressive performance for someone who's not really an actor. And it seems that the show's going to be a bit more just truly about the ensemble. But it's going to touch on some stuff that I think is kind of under discussed. It's like the gender dynamics in the skate culture.
Yeah.
It's probably not the most mainstream thing when it comes to gender relations in terms of what people talk about. So I think it's going to be cool to see that portrayed a little bit. Also, it clearly has a New York sensibility, being about New York City and people that are from New York and being shot there. So that's cool. And like that visual style, I think actually kind of stands out. Like just watching them like shoot people skating in the middle of the street in the Lower East Side. It's like, don't know how exactly you pulled that off, but looks sick.
Yeah, it looked awesome.
Yeah,
and it looked
I'm all
like
about it.
Yeah, and it looked like a genuine like rush hour almost. So they must have just had someone on a skateboard following along,
right,
but
or something.
It's definitely really cool. And yeah, I think just kind of going into this world of skate, which has, like you said, turned out to be a very fascinating world for movie and television recently. And I think also because it seems like a lot of the people that gravitate towards those hobbies seem to have interesting backstories, or at least the ones that have been followed seem to have interesting backstories behind them. And I'm hoping we flesh that out a little bit more. But man, when they were hanging out just like in that car smoking weed, and I forgot what the guy's name was that his backpack got stolen. But man, I was dying laughing when he's like, I'm known for not losing things, and here I am, I lost something. And like he was just like freaking out. And then he was like, I gotta smoke weed right now, I'm going to smoke weed. Like just the way he's going about it made me really laugh.
Yeah.
And then the interactions between Nina Moran and Ajani Russell, who first of all, Ajani Russell with like the bleached eyebrows just like totally stands out and is like very eye catching. But their interaction was just like so charged. I was like, I can't believe these are first time actors for the most part. I know Cabrina Adams has had like a role here or there, but nothing super in depth. So, or super well known, I should say. So really, really interesting to see this, and I'm stoked to watch the rest of it. I hope that these sort of stories keep getting told, and good on HBO for highlighting it. Any other thoughts on this before we wrap up?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. All that. I'd really appreciate that A$AP Rocky fucking Problems drop while they're getting high.
Yeah,
and they actually let it ride for like a verse and a half, get into the Drake part. And I was like, wow, hell yeah, this is still hitting. Let's go.
Yeah,
and also
I listened to that song like 5 times this weekend. It's so good.
Hell yeah. And then the dude too, when he was like, oh no, I'm looking at my phone. They're like, oh, let's do the Find My iPhone, we'll be fine. And he's like, can't the government listen to me, as he holds up his flip phone.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that definitely fits the stereotype.
Yep. Oh my God, so good. Yeah, looking forward to the next episode. We'll be talking about it when it wraps up, but check it out and give us your thoughts below. Dave, I can't believe. So we've known the Westworld finale is coming. I can't believe we get to talk about Drake and Westworld in the same episode. 2 of my biggest, probably like left turns in terms of critical reception, or I guess popular perception, because Drake, very popular artist that I'm not a super fan of, like most people. In Westworld, very well documented if you know anything about our reviews, that we are not big fans of Westworld. But Westworld season 3, we were maybe a little bit optimistic, bringing Aaron Paul into the mix, Kid Cudi. I mean, anytime you can get Marshawn Lynch in the fold, potential for some greatness.
This all sounds good. Tell me more.
And
you
Vincent
know what? Cassell, of course.
season 2 ended with a bang, which it often does for Westworld, and we were like, you know what, they're moving outside the park. Maybe there'll be some interesting developments here that might bring us back in. Are you feeling any different about Westworld after season 3 than you did when season 2 ended?
Hell no. This shit is so convoluted and fake deep and completely absent of stakes. I guess that makes me the outlier for pointing that out. I don't know. I don't get how people find this satisfying at all. It's infuriating.
Dave,
No,
are you Dolores?
Oh,
because I have no idea who the hell Dolores is.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Yes, I am. And I would applaud Jonah Nolan and Lisa Joy if they had the balls to keep Dolores Prime, whatever, dead, you know? But obviously Evan Rachel Wood is one of the faces of this show. We know that ain't happening. She'll be back in season 4. That's the problem with this show. Anything can be undone. And like, there's 2 big red herrings in this season, right? There's the one where there's the anti-riot big robot guy that's like 15 feet tall, right? You know he's going to come back. They introduce him in like the 2nd episode. He comes back to save Tessa. And I'm like, oh yeah, saw that coming. Cool. Looks nice. Great effects. Cool. Pretty flat though. And then of course when Tessa's like, I'm downloading the IP. It's so valuable. We got to save these hosts. And then they burn all the hosts in the basement. But oh, look at the stinger scene. They're making the hosts again. Like, who didn't see that coming? Like the 2 red, especially that one. I was like so annoyed. I was like, yes, of course you're bringing all the hosts back. No fucking shit. Like, oh yeah, Hector. This tough scene where Maeve is like, oh, Hector, my love, he's dead. Just kidding. He'll come back later. It don't matter. It's fine. And that's the problem. You can't care about anything because it doesn't. Nothing matters.
Yeah, I actually found myself saying out loud when Maeve and Dolores were fighting, you know, near the end. I was like, you neither one of you can really die. Like, you don't actually die in the show. So why are you spending your time doing this? I guess because one of you needs to succumb, but in the end, like, just because they succumb doesn't mean that anything necessarily changes. Now, it's the part I was probably most sad about this season, because I did feel like there were some things that were pretty well done. It's a well shot show. I think some of the action scenes are pretty riveting and fun to watch. And if you just want to watch this show for the action, and a couple of these episodes were just pure action from start to finish, then yeah, you can enjoy the show for that. But to think it's a bigger concept show that actually hits, we learn about her human backstory is a lot more fascinating than Tessa Thompson's character as a fucking host. Like, I want to rewind and have them build out that character in the first 2 seasons and understand why she is the way she is, what things led to that, and her relationship with Ed Harris before she's a goddamn robot. Because at this point, then it doesn't matter.
Right. Yeah. And so now we're left with what? Robot host Charlotte, who is or is not really Dolores. And then we have host Ed Harris, host Man in Black, who we kind of knew existed at the end of season 2. But like, so now what? Now James Delos, now Man in Black is dead. So now we're just left with a one-off, truly villainous Men in Black. I guess that's the implication of what he'll be moving forward. Whatever, I guess. Apparently Ed Harris was much more fan of playing that character than playing the businessman real life Delos. So good for Ed, I guess. Get your checks. But yeah, like, dude, I really like Charlotte's presence, you know? Like, Tessa Thompson just kind of shows up in season 2. Like, what, she opens the door naked, right? She's just being a boss and like just being this badass like executive at Delos. And then she dies, right? And it's like, I like Tessa Thompson as an actor, but nothing about her arc, the arc this season worked with like the family and Michael Ealy as the baby dad, and like none of that worked. No. And then even Delos kind of spins his wheel where Serac is making like gaslighting everyone to making everyone think Delos is insane, then he's not, and he's trying to take back his company by being a good guy. And then he dies. Then like that didn't matter either, right? And like, if you think about it, Bernard also, another big president, Jeffrey Wright, Bernard doesn't do a whole lot in this season either, right? Where it's kind of keeping people on the board and spinning the wheels, keeping the treadmill going. And like, I kind of laughed when it starts off in the season and we find out Luke Hemsworth's character Stubbs is a host. And that's the thing with Westworld. You can kind of just change your mind on things. There was no implication through 2 seasons that Stubbs was a host at all. And we have no way of knowing if Joe Nolan and Lisa Joy ever thought that once, but they can change their mind. That's just the way the show works. And that was cool. I guess I actually kind of liked their dynamic and seeing them do stuff. Not that anything they did really was interesting or mattered, but I enjoyed seeing them, I guess.
I was thinking about this show in relation to Succession, right? Because I see these as like the 2 main like staples of HBO at this point. In terms of gone, Veep is gone, so you don't even have those like comedy staples. These are the 2 horses that HBO is riding on. Succession is so aware of what it is, what it does well, and it totally builds on that every single episode. And yeah, it's gonna be some petty shit, and it's gonna be some family drama, and it's gonna be some rich person undercutting petty quarrels. But we're here for that, you know, and you're gonna get some twists along the way, but it's very much what it is. Westworld tries to be so much in all at the same time, you know. It tries to be this commentary on humanity. It tries to be this commentary on fate and determinism versus free choice and free will. And I just feel like all of it is like half baked in a lot of ways. Like the Caleb character, which is supposed to be this played by Aaron Paul, supposed to be this like, you are really human because you've made choices, and that's what makes you human. And that kind of being what it comes down to, and like choosing beauty over choosing ugliness, and having to do ugly things to achieve beauty. It just all kind of left me with this huge eye roll. Like I felt like I had to pick my eyes up off the floor like 5 times in the final episode, and like in the final 2 episodes as they were explaining this. And I also feel like they go from not telling you anything and you're kind of like, what the hell is happening, for like 6 of the 8 episodes, and then the last 2 episodes are just these total like exposition dumps trying to explain all the concepts and tie it together. And it just felt so messy and like overdone to me. It was just a lot, man. I really don't know how you fix this show moving forward, and maybe it doesn't need to be fixed. Maybe they're just gonna like have people like us tuning in to hate watch it, or just to report back, because it seems like a lot of people do enjoy the show, and a lot of people do find it interesting and intriguing. And even before we started recording today, you said it was kind of an easy watch, only because you can kind of turn your brain off and just enjoy parts of it and not have to worry about, trying to think any deeper on it if you don't want to.
I will say I enjoyed Vincent Cassel as Sirach, as the villain this season.
Yeah.
Cassel in general is just kind of a welcome presence whenever he's on screen. But I feel like his effectiveness as the villain started to wane a little bit, because he's presented as this omnipresent, infallible, secret mastermind of civilization, yet Dolores and who was with her? Dolores gets to infiltrate that site with her magic sniper rifle, right? Like it seemed like he got outsmarted kind of easily. But yeah, I mean, overall, just in terms of making the show better, the show would have to have a different interest in its storytelling. It has a way of keeping things from the audience for the sake of keeping them, not because they're interesting, not because they're even that deep or that complicated, but just because that's the way it wants to present its arcs. And I just don't find it effective at all. And, I have quibbles about stuff. Like, I wish Dolores was a bit more emotive of a character. I guess in a sense, this was my favorite Dolores season. And I really like Evan Rachel Wood. I think it was cool seeing her kind of like infiltrate the 1% society in the normal Westworld world. That was cool. But yeah, narratively, man, it's just hard to get behind. But it like the obvious influences of like Metropolis and Blade Runner in the world. Yeah, that looks cool. That looks really cool. That's the problem, though. Like, there's nothing under the surface with this, and it talks about all its themes as if it warrants something being under the surface. If it was presented as a simpler thing, I wouldn't be as critical. But it's actually setting out, as you said, to kind of be all these different things at once, and nothing's really landing. So it's tough, but season 4 is coming. Obviously, they can't start production now, so I think that show at least is 2022. So it's going to be a while. But I'm curious to see how much discussion this season really warrants before people move on anyway.
Yeah. I mean, we'll probably be talking about it, but man, I don't know. It's definitely not a show I look forward to. I actually ended up like kind of just binging it this past week because it never feels essential to me to watch. And for a show that is such big budget, and that HBO has really, like I said, made this one of its signature shows at the moment, just kind of worrisome, especially when we just talked about a show that they just kind of threw out there, and it feels like such a more fun hang and a show I want to go back and watch more. It being a 27-minute show about skateboarders in New York, like right. It doesn't always need to be so complex, but it might just be us, Dave. But anyways, I think we're gonna wrap up there. What do we got for next week?
We'll be talking about Normal People on Hulu. Very excited to talk about that. Also, Ryan Murphy's Hollywood.
Hell yeah,
out now on Netflix. And then a bunch of and then I Know This Much Is True on HBO. Mark Ruffalo, dual roles. That was actually shot a lot in my hometown. That's pretty cool. See how that goes. And then a bunch of music. Kalani, Haley Williams, Lil Sims, some other people as well. Nav, we don't care about Nav, but he's dropping. So yeah, really excited about those shows. Let's talk about it.
SoundCloud.com/NowstalgiaPod, YouTube.com/NowstalgiaPod, and follow us on Twitter @NowstalgiaPod. We appreciate you. Stay safe. Wear your masks. Peace out.